Hi, welcome to the Overcast podcast. I am Max, and this is my co-host Jonathan. We are two students at U of T. We're computer science students, and we had an interest in AI and AI ethics. So we started making this podcast. I hope you enjoy. So the first topic. Okay, you go.
Yeah, all right. So just first off, the first topic, we want to just address what we mean by AI, I guess.
Mm.
Um, so there's two types of AI that we mainly think of. Um,
And what are those?
and the first, that I think is what most people kind of think of is the top-down approach.
Uh huh.
And this is sort of the idea where you have an optimal, like tic-tac-toe strategy, and you have a computer with a set of rules that is programmed to follow to carry out a task. Um, and the most famous of this, which you may know, I don't know if you know, is the IBM chess program.
Uh
This
huh.
was the world famous program that beat the best chess champion at the time.
Gary
This was a
Kasparov.
top down. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. This is a top down approach of AI where it had a set of rules to follow and instructions to follow
Uh huh.
to figure out how to win at chess versus a human.
Yeah, and yeah, this was when AI was super new, and
Mhm.
Gary Kasparov actually, when he got beat, he thought they were cheating, and there was like a human operator because he couldn't he couldn't believe that like an AI, like an artificial intelligence, could beat him.
That's crazy. That was 30 years ago,
Yeah,
like
that was
literally
only
30
30
years
years
ago.
ago. Yeah.
um, so that's the first that's the first idea of AI,
Uh-huh.
which is not where we tend to think of nowadays with the new technologies like ChatGPT and all
Mm.
that. Um, and that's different from top down. This is called bottom up. Um, and so, like I was saying with ChatGPT, this is basically getting computers to a program based on like a bunch of statistics, large amounts of data,
Mm-hmm.
to put it into like this model, do a whole bunch of math with it, and come up with some input to some output. And we don't really know how it gets from one end to the other. There's not a set of rules and instructions that it's really
Yeah.
following. It's kind of making sense of the data set that it's given and coming up with some solution at the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It basically just takes like these large pieces of data and then like compartmentalizes them and then just makes like predictions
mhm,
based on them. Yeah.
exactly. And then this was so most recently used, we know of ChatGPT and chatbots and all those generative AI things that we'll go into discuss more. Um, but also some earlier examples of this was with like the AlphaGo, where we had Google's Go program
Mm-hmm.
that beat the best human at playing Go, which is even harder to do than chess, that require that this idea of bottom up versus top down, because the top down approaches would have been impossible to do because there's so many different possibilities that they had to do
Yeah.
it differently.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's just I think I just want to get that out there. The difference between top down and bottom up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
and we're gonna be talking about mainly bottom up, which
mhm,
is neural networks, which is like sort of emulating how the brain works to create like artificial intelligence systems. And you kind of imagine. I mean, it's called a neural network, referred to like neurons. You can kind of imagine as like a bunch, like a sequence of a bunch of neurons that uh, fire
just fire
in
off.
a certain way. Yeah, depending on what like feedback they're given.
Hmm.
And in the
Yeah,
same way that we don't understand how the brain works, we don't really understand how these like AI systems work either.
exactly. Yeah, and comes from that, not understanding is those unintended consequences, potential dangers, right?
Mm.
Uh, and I think that is where we're going to look at today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I have something I want to look at right away
Okay.
with the idea of the unchecked AI development and just like the consequences of where it's going, but also like where it's kind of already happening and we don't even realize.
Mm.
Um, so I just wanted to bring up this example from one of the articles that we have, or that we have listed here, called "Unintended Consequences of Biased Robotics and Artificial Intelligence Systems."
Okay.
Um, and there's an example in here where back in 2015, so this was 8 years ago at this point, um, you had Google's photo service classifying black people as gorillas in certain pictures. And this was because of a faulty um, AI system that like they didn't intend for this to happen, but it's happening anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most interesting part of this issue is that after Google learned of it, do you know what they did after the problem was was told to them?
Fix it.
They you would hope they would fix it, right? But what this article actually goes to show is that more than 2 years later, they check back with this, it's still happening, and instead they
Wow.
just decided to entirely remove classifying images of gorillas entirely instead of fixing the
Wow.
issue. So 2 years later, there's no fix at all, and you have this issue. Um, and I thought that was just something that you may not think about, but it's not as far off as the idea of AI is going to kill us all. This is already happening with smaller systems.
Yeah. And obviously, like you can imagine, Google probably didn't intend for that like
Hmm.
racial stereotype to be pronounced in its like algorithm, but uh, the problem here is like it's super hard to get unbiased data.
Yeah.
And what Google did wrong here was they didn't check their data, because all data is going to be biased. You don't know where the biases are going to be, or if they're going to have like racial stereotypes in the data, because all data is based on humans,
Hmm.
and humans aren't perfect. There's going to be flaws in the data no matter what.
Yeah. 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 Inherently, you can't have perfect data,
Yeah.
but you can always strive towards it. And I think the problem here is that instead of trying to fix it and resolve the issue, they just completely kind of ignored it and removed the feature itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you know, that's a like that, if that thinking keeps going, that's a long-term consequence that we're going to deal with.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think tying in with that idea of biased data that you touched on, there was another piece in this article as well, talking about biased data for a training data set that is used for these AIs
Mm-hmm.
called labeled faces in the wild.
Okay.
Um, and so, like, a problem with this data set specifically is that this data set is a data set of images of faces, so that has 15,000 images of faces, but as few as 7% of those images are of black people. Um, and this lack of like representation, this lack of diversity in many AI systems
Mm.
leads to the issue that we talked about with the Google
Yeah.
classifying black people as gorillas. Like this, it creates a negative feedback loop of bias.
Mm-hmm. Because yeah, the I guess the algorithms aren't like trained properly on like black
Mhm.
people's faces.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have the training data sets, then how are you going? If you don't have the data sets with diverse data, um, how can you represent everyone? You
Mm.
can't
Yeah.
have you won't have AI that's actually representative. Um,
Wow.
so that's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
And like I think the issue that some people think of is like as a technical issue, but it's really not. Like it's not a technical issue at all. It comes from really just getting uh, diversity into the people working on the algorithms and the uh, diversity of the data going into the algorithms as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a technical problem. It doesn't have to be a technical problem. It's something that they're not working on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same article says that like the consensus by the like machine learning artificial intelligence community is that bias is an issue and it needs to be addressed like specifically. You can't have like wishy-washy like rules and regulations for for bias. You have to directly address it, or it's gonna affect your system like exponentially down the line, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was an example of uh, like AI as it is right now, the problems with it,
Hmm.
consequences of unchecked development. Let's talk about consequences in the future, which is I
Yes.
know a lot of people's minds are on that because there's a
Big shakeup, the past year with ChatGPT and all the generative AI tools, not just the chat ones, but also, um, creating art and all that.
uh-huh.
Uh, so yeah, there's definitely we could let's look at some of those let's look at
Yeah.
where that's going.
Yeah, and so just to start us off, just we have an article uh, called "From Coded Bias to Existential Threat: Expert Frames in the Epistemic Politics of AI Governments," which basically goes over like current expert viewpoints on like AI systems and uh, the problems that could persist down the line if we don't like make sure that yeah. And right before that, I wanted to just mention that uh, there's something called the AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which basically refers to like an artificial system which is smarter than humans. And a lot of people, I wonder if the people watching this would or feel this way, but a lot of people kind of just have accepted that AGI will be developed eventually. Like people have different like timelines.
Sure thing.
Yeah, but I think it's generally accepted as like a sure thing that will happen, and I feel like that idea makes the things in this article like much scarier.
Yeah, I think that's a very scary viewpoint because if we look at what we've been already dealing with, um, and you're gonna have something that is possibly trained on data that you know is not representative of everybody. Like, I think that's very scary of a future. But I think as you're saying with AGI, like we talk about that scary, but there also is benefits. There also is, you know, good that is supposed to come from this. And
Yeah.
some of these experts in this article mentioned that.
Yeah, we
And I
wouldn't be developing AGI if there wasn't any
oh yeah,
like positive outlooks. Yeah.
there is the idea though, pursuit of the unknown just because.
Mm-hmm.
But from this article, I can look at right away that some of the experts mention the idea that AI and AGI as like a transformative promise is something that will transform the world, the most significant impact like of any tool technology will ever develop.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something that is smarter than our own that will go out and bring a whole technological revolution. This is directly from the article that it will revolutionize and disrupt practically every industry.
Yeah, actually that reminds me of a quote by Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, and he said that upon developing AGI, we will realize that the goal of all of human innovation was to develop AGI.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The former and present CEO of OpenAI.
Yeah, the former president and president of OpenAI.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. And yeah, and I think that's a really interesting quote from one of the lead companies developing towards AGI.
Yeah.
Just to see, because I find that very scary almost to understand that we're leading towards there. That he finds it inevitable, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. There's such different like viewpoints on AGI. I know Sam Altman personally. Like he has this viewpoint in the article of AI as a transformative promise that will like revolutionize the future and like do like a ton of good, right? But not everyone views it that way. In the article, they talk about another viewpoint that some AI experts have as AI as catastrophic and an existential risk, which is the common viewpoint that you might have seen in like movies such as The Matrix or Terminator or
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, HAL 9000.
HAL 9000.
Open the pod bay doors, HAL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people know of this viewpoint. They might not necessarily think this way, but this is like the viewpoint that gets a lot of attention just because it is, it's very scary, you might say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Anytime you talk about fear, it's gonna. Well, you're gonna be fearful.
Yeah.
Especially about the future, it's always fearful, because it's unknown, right? and yeah, and like even how they talk about the catastrophic and existential risk, they do talk about that they're not inevitable. The existential risk is not inevitable. Like
Hmm.
we can put steps in place to avert the catastrophes
Yeah.
that are potential,
Yeah.
but it requires like a shift in government to kind of um, be prepared to seize the
Yeah.
opportunities and the regulations and problems around AI.
Yeah. And there was that proposed AI slowdown in 2023
Hmm.
where I forget who proposed it.
Like Elon Musk was one of the
Yeah,
proponents. They
yeah,
wanted 6 months
yeah. They wanted the
slowdown.
6 month slowdown where no like no continual work on like state of the art AI systems would be done, and that would be to get our ground to um, like think
Give us
about
some time.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And there was a lot of people that disagreed with the slowdown. It didn't end up happening. I think it would be nearly impossible to do it without like government intervention because companies have profit incentive and they're not gonna stop working, stop creating their product just because some guy on the internet told them to. Even if it's Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, there were many experts that signed off on that,
Yeah,
but even still, many of them were AI, experts, um, warning about the risk. But
yeah,
it seems we're still going forward.
yeah.
Um,
I think we really need like proper rules and regulations if we were to do something like that.
mhm, yeah, and I think that leads into the idea like of the existential risk. The article here also mentions the uh, existing threat of AI to human fundamental rights.
Hmm.
Um, and because when we think of AI, we're thinking of like the future concern to us,
Yeah.
right? Like AI, we know AI is not going to be worried about itself per se. We're worried about what AI will do to us,
Yeah.
um, and what that changes. And many of these experts in the article they talk about how AI is already around us and how it's already embedded in violating the rights of people and minority groups on a daily basis, like we mentioned
Yeah.
with the Google Photos example.
Hmm.
Um, and they talk about how like we're thinking of this AGI far out idea, which may
Yeah.
not be too far out, but it's not a present issue that is it's not present that a super intelligent AI is going to dominate humanity right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, Instead, we have to look at AI's problem with its current everyday use,
Yeah.
and that's what they talk about in this article, how it can be harmful unintentionally, um, from parole sentencing to dictating credit scores, and they talk about an idea where determining whether refugees are even genuine. So there's AI systems that are already developed right now that are
Oh yeah.
working to at these issues. So I
Yeah.
think
I saw
it's
that.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. That's super worrying. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's. I think like there's the example in like China of the CCP. Trying
Hmm.
to spy on basically all of its citizens to using facial recognition technology. I know you've probably heard of the social credit score,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like that's something that exists right now. But
Yeah.
you don't even I don't yeah like with what you said, you don't even have to go to like the east to see that. Like there's there are technologies like that that are being used in like the states, Canada, or Europe that are doing the same things like very similarly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, not just like yeah. So we get that idea of mass surveillance from China and in the states here as well, Canada, but also like through the online censorship of like information or um, targeted propaganda from AI systems as you scroll on your YouTube feed or Instagram feed, like
Hmm.
these systems are already kind of around us and able to influence us.
Yeah, yeah, they're influencing our daily lives, right?
Yeah.
Every single time you open up your social media app or YouTube or whatever, you get a recommended feed. You're not really usually choosing like what to look at. You
Mhm.
just kind of get fed something, and like what the algorithm gives you, that's what you're able to see. And you have to kind of just trust like these social media companies to have your best interest, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You would, because we have no idea of how they're working or what they're doing behind the scenes or what's being used and trained and what data they're using of us. We kind of just have to put our blind faith. There's no regulations around these
Yeah,
systems, um, and I think that's really scary because
yeah,
that's affecting right now.
it's definitely concerning for sure. And we're gonna talk about regulations for that in the next episode as well.
Yes, and that's just what like companies are kind of doing.
Yeah.
And I think something that was really interesting in this article as well is that they talked about, or some experts had um, the idea of AI as like the future of national security,
Hmm.
and that at the heart of it, there's like nations have AI. They want to protect it for themselves to use against others. They want to keep it as something that they race for. Is that we call
Hmm.
it the AI. I
Arms
think there are
race.
people are naming it, yeah, the AI arms race. It's
Yeah.
something that this article puts out as saying this technology AI is has the potential to be as transformative on par with nuclear weapons, aircrafts, computers, and biotech.
Jeez.
And I think with experts saying that this threatens state security and it's as potentially harmful as nuclear weapons, I think you have to put some thought into
Yeah.
um, about who is working on these systems and um, what are we doing around to make them secure and safe for us.
Hmm.
And I think that was just a really interesting idea of how many experts are already looking at, this is nuclear weapons. This can end us.
Yeah.
Um,
Even like when you introduced that, like immediately I was thinking of, oh, like they're basically treating it like nuclear weapons, because the way nuclear weapons are treated is, uh, you know, countries don't want to give them up because
mhm.
other countries have them, and uh, unless there's like uh,
Like treaty,
yeah,
it's
like a
a
treaty,
treaty banning,
uh,
testing of nuclear weapons.
you want to be able to protect yourself, right? Because yeah, obviously nuclear weapons is like the most devastating weapon that exists, and the fact that uh, AI systems are being treated the same way, uh, you can kind of view AI as a weapon as well.
Yeah, no, you definitely can. Just from the example we talked about of companies being able to kind of influence and change your behavior using those AI systems. If you have, an AI system, an AGI, that's smarter than humans, um, then you don't know what the consequences could be.
Yeah.
Especially if they're in the wrong hands or they're used wrong and they're
Uh-huh.
not trained to be safe.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of the election interference in the 2016 election, where basically Facebook was providing a ton of data to this to the Russian government indirectly. They were giving a bunch of data to this data collection company, and the data collection company was giving the data to Russian like the Russian government, and the Russian government was creating like bots on Facebook in order to like sway the vote in the election. And
Yeah,
obviously this data is collected using AI.
it's scraped all over. Yeah, wow. And that was wow. That was 2016.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
it's been
And
7 years.
I'm not sure. I'm assuming. I hope. I don't have any articles of things, but I hope Facebook did something to stop that or ability to do that.
Well, there was the
But
hearings in Congress, but
hmm
those really did not do much.
yeah. So we have a long ways to go, but we do have discussions on it. That's what we want to do, right? We want to be able to discuss ideas of how to fix this,
Yeah.
and because we looked at many consequences: nuclear weapons, human right trampling, um, existential risk of to
Mm-hmm.
us all. And I think, and the we don't want to leave out the transformative promise of lifting everybody up a new technological age. Don't
Mm-hmm.
want to leave that out, but we do have to put at the heart of it that like these systems can be dangerous,
Yeah.
and we gotta be careful.
Yeah, and I think the heart of this danger is the black box model that
Mm.
the AI systems like incorporate, because they're created with like a bottom up approach. They're not they're not like precisely programmed uh, exactly how they're supposed to behave. Um, they kind of almost um, like develop themselves in a way, right? Because it's
Hmm.
machine learning where they're constantly learning based on like prior data.
Yeah, yeah, there's no rules or instructions. We're kind of just saying, here's the input, here's the output.
Yeah,
We tell them the output looks good, but they kind of just learn as they go. It's a black box. We
yeah.
really have no idea how they're getting to the output.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Um,
And with talking about like Facebook and social media companies earlier, like the algorithms that you get uh, that are used to create your, like your homepage on like social media apps, like these are using these like black box models. And not only do you not understand why like that random video pops up on your page, but neither does the algorithm really. If you ask
man,
Facebook, they would not be able to tell you.
that's scary.
That is,
That that is that is honestly very scary because they're working towards AI systems that are going to be smarter than us. We have no idea how,
yeah.
and they already don't know how at presently.
Yeah, so I just want to come back to um, uh, talking about the different expert like frames and point of views about AI. You might have noticed that we talked about like a ton of different outlooks that AI experts have. They have like completely opposite outlooks. Some AI experts, think that AI will be the resurgence for humanity and will be amazing, and some experts think that it'll be the doom of humanity. You can think of like the Matrix, like we're gonna be uh,
We're trapped in a simulated world and
yeah,
not know it.
yeah, who knows, honestly.
Yeah.
And uh, the big problem with this really is like AI experts can't really agree on on many things. They can't even really agree on what AI is. In the article, the author writes that like AI experts, like they can't figure out, or they can't like decide um,
What is covered
theoretically,
by AI?
yeah, like what is AI, what is not AI.
Hmm.
And you can imagine it's very hard to create like policies uh, around something that you can't even really define, right? Because policies are all about defining things and uh, creating like specific regulations around those definitions, right?
Hmm. Yeah, like, yeah. If you don't have a strict definition, how are you going to be able to put guardrails around it?
Mm-hmm.
You have no, if you don't have a solid ground, then someone will sweep it away, start somewhere else.
Yeah, and
Um,
who are you supposed to like listen to, like, right? If you're like a policymaker, which AI expert are you gonna listen to? Like, you could imagine. Oh, maybe you can choose the person with like the worst outlook, like the person that thinks that AI will be the worst for humanity. You can think that's like a safe option, but at the same time, you can't really morally do that because there are so many possible, um, you know, positives for developing AI as well.
yeah, yeah, and the authors of the article even mention how like attempting to govern AI may actively impede the creation of effective governance because we don't have a definition of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to put around some pieces will just slow us down because we can't, we'll be advocating for one or the other, and we won't be able to firmly, protect what we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and lastly, related to this, right before we end off the episode, I wanted to mention this correlation between like different industries and how AI does not have that many regulations as it is right now, and there are some AI experts that say that it's good because AI will be able to develop quicker, and there are a lot of AI experts that also think that it's bad because we're we don't really have control of these AI systems. We don't really understand them, and I wanted to relate that to like other industries like construction, like like physical engineering, and there's like actual regulation like practitioners that like OSHA for example, that will come into like a workshop or to like a construction site and like observe the practices that are being undergone like by these companies or in the workers, and like that's like a very effective way of checking and ensuring that these companies are behaving the correct way, and that does not really exist for AI. And as it stands right now, it's not even really possible because even the developers don't really understand how these AI systems work.
Yeah. Currently, it's kind of just self-regulation. There's no, yeah, you're saying there's no body to regulate.
Mm-hmm.
And um, at the moment, self-regulation kind of seems the only effective route.
Yeah.
But that puts, having to put trust in the companies developing it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's all we wanted to talk about this week. We talked about like what AI is, um, like current like outlooks onto AI as it behaves currently, and how it might affect the future. And we even talked a bit about like policymaking and rules and regulations, which is what we're going to expand into next episode. So thank you for watching. See you next one.